Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Max Rounds 30 podcast, where there is no overtime. As usual, I am joined by Koi from MTU Esports, Jeff from Dust2 US, who has recently been, RL seems to like him, so that's cool. And I'm Jacob from University of Wisconsin-Whitewater Esports. And in 30 minutes, we'll be covering all of this week's NA Counter-Strike Global Offensive content.
I don't like that your opinion of me is as glowing as it was during the first take of this episode, and I'm offended.
Sorry, Jeff.
Yeah, I don't.
Sorry, we messed up the first time.
You seem more jaded this time after I insulted you repeatedly about wasting 10 minutes of my time.
Yeah, we may have had a recording hiccup. Luckily, it was only 10 minutes in, so hopefully it's
first one
not as painful.
So first one, you get a pass. You get a pass.
Yeah, all right. Well, that's where we are. So we've had a lot going on this week. We were originally going to be covering what was that? Player professionalism,
player profile development and business, how to brand yourself as a player. And we are obviously not fucking talking about that anymore because that's not what the people want to hear about. And what do the people want to hear about, guys?
Well, we have some beautiful stuff going on with a recent Ian Smith interview from the ESIC, as well as the entire advanced playoffs kind of turning out to be a farce due to some DDoS related issues. Koi, you mind expanding a little bit on that? We'll get started with the DDoS stuff right away.
Yeah, so the big thing that's happening in that sphere is right now the entire legitimacy of advanced playoffs as a whole is completely questionable right now because the vast majority of teams, there have been some small exceptions that haven't really been affected too much, but the vast majority of teams have experienced either one or multiple players on their team getting DDoS during these official playoff matches, which are completely tossing teams into disarray, having to pull into subs or having to play a man down in some situations. It's really unfortunate to see, teams put their heart and soul in for an entire season, put in a ton of work, put in great results in other qualifiers and events like that, and just ultimately, have to fall flat because they weren't able to play with their full roster.
Yeah, for people who don't know, if you've been living under a rock or you don't cover advanced playoffs, basically every match you would want to watch between teams that you think have a shot at relegation has been DDoS, and it's resulted in, like Koi said, teams have had to bring in their coaches. Teams have had to basically bring in their friend who's been roster riding for 9 seasons. They've had to bring in, just some guy who asked, "Can I join your roster?" And it's we talked about this. We talked about this in the original recording, but basically the issue at hand is that, for the teams that are being affected, your entire strat book goes out the window because for a lot of these teams, they'll have players who, have defined roles. Like, say, for example, someone's a really good, monster player on Overpass, or they're a particularly good site anchor on Vertigo. Well, what happens when that person either is playing with 800 ping or they get kicked? Well, you're having your coach come in, or you're having a ringer come in, and, you're basically go play his spots, and they might not really know. They might either not play that spot, or they're just they don't really play CSGO, and so your entire way of playing the game has gone out the window. And even for the other team, it's not really ideal because ideally you would think these teams would have the IGL and the coach and maybe some players get together and be like, well, Koi likes to play Overpass Grail on Monster, so let's throw let's have some mollies go that way. And we'll smoke him out, and we know his tendencies, and we can get B-side for free, basically. Well, Koi's no longer in the server; it's just some random guy. Maybe maybe it's some guy who's nervous, he's jittery, he's running through smokes every round. So from both ends, it's one team is losing their strategy, one team is losing all of their match prep, and that's not good for competitive integrity. When you have two teams that are only shadows of their actual capacity playing in the lower bracket for survival, and we don't actually get to see them fight for their lives.
Exactly. It's so important. I think the biggest thing for me is that watching teams like Headshot Kings the other day, not in their match against Pain, but in one of their other matches, they had to play with 2 subs, and just these teams have been putting up amazing results and a ton of work in, and it shows in the cash cups that they play and the offline qualifiers and stuff that they're playing. Like all of these large events where they're taking maps off MDL teams, they're beating MDL teams. They're, in the case of like Able Esports, for example, they're beating High Coast on Overpass, like one of their better maps. Like, and then to see them ultimately, like, nothing comes of it, and they might never make Premier because their fifth can't get into a server is ridiculous to me.
Yeah, and honestly, the way things are going right now, I think you said that advanced playoffs is a farce, and I agree. Whoever said it is like there's really no excuse for like how shit the division has been since this DDoSing started. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if some of these players get so frustrated, especially teams like UIU who have been DDoS for every single series they've played in playoffs. They just say, "Fuck it! I don't." Those guys in Valorant over there, they're getting signed to better contracts than I am, and they get to actually play the fucking game instead of sitting calling your ISP for 3 hours. Why don't I go over there and see, let's see what's going on in the Valorant scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I'll bring it up too, because like when it comes to that too, it's like at some point, everybody's been turning and they've been pointing their finger at ESEA saying, what are you going to do about this? Which makes sense. They're the TO, they're the ones managing this. And the question that, gets brought up is, how do they fix that? Now, of course, it's not that simple. We've seen people like Casey Foster bring up, it's like you can't. It's really like DDoSing doesn't work where you can just get a new IP and you're fine. There's ways to sniff out your new IP when you switch. So what's happening is like you're getting knocked down for like somebody can just say this IP, screw that IP for like a month, and they can just hit it. It's distributed denial of service, and they're just knocking you offline for as long as they want. So with what's going on right now, ESEA has decided to, at least with some matches, is what it seems like, just based off of what I've been hearing. They've been saying, we're not going to put this match on HLTV. I believe Note was, messing with trying that out, as well as, not streaming certain games. Because I guess the idea there is, if they can't see it and they don't know about it, maybe they won't DDoS it. However, it's really not that simple. So we'll see if that helps at all, but everybody's kind of leaning towards this being possibly, salty team within
the division. Well,
the division.
Because I don't want to get into I don't like we're gonna take this in like a weird conspiratorial direction. But what people have been noticing is that traditionally when teams get DDoS, it's usually bettors seeing, oh, this worst team has way better odds. If I put in a bet at the start of the game and then maybe one player gets DDoS and it's not exceedingly obvious that it's like outside manipulation, then I can win the match and make big money. But for a lot of these matches, because a lot of the betting sites don't have extensive data on advanced teams, the odds will be like 1.75 to like 1.8. So, you bet $100 and you walk away with like $105. So when the boogeyman of Russian bettors is no longer like an issue, we gotta think like, well, who else is benefiting from this? And the rumor, like Jacob said, that's been tossed around is it's just a team who is upset at, for some reason, a bunch of playoff teams and doing it basically just to ruin playoffs, which I hope they get caught, and I hope they get 10-year malicious activity bans and join our good friend Eptima in the forget me pile. But and one thing with this DDoSing that makes me think it can't be Russian bettors is, why would you DDoS the same team every single series for the entirety of playoffs? And at some point, they're not going to have good odds anymore, so there's not an economic incentive. And like Jacob said, like a lot of people in the scene have been offering like conventional wisdom about how to deal with DDoSers. And these players have all talked about how they've gone to great lengths, getting new modems, getting new routers, having their ISP change their IP right before the match starts, and none of this seems to be working. So it's like either these are like fourth dimensional bettors who see something we don't, or there's something more going on here. And now I don't think we can really have a discussion about the DDoSing situation without talking about the heroes and the villains of playoffs. Mm-hmm. And so looking at the hero side, I want to just give thanks and praise to Big Chillin, who on 2 occasions now have gone out of their way to submit tickets and have the match postponed when they're not the ones being DDoS, because they say, well, we don't want to play an opponent who's being DDoS. We want to win it legitimately, and we want to give our opponents the best chance. Which we know that NA players are rats and they're inherently self-interested. So that's like incredibly refreshing to see from advanced players to say, well, I'm not going to win like this. But then on the flip side, we have teams like X13 who are doing the exact opposite. Do you think one of you can go into what X13's been up to?
Yeah, so the big thing with X13 is I'll use a particular series as an example in one of their lower bracket games versus UIU. They weren't exactly the most compassionate or empathetic team out there, especially when it came to unpausing tech time, taking I believe it was 9 free rounds without opponents in the server. And a couple of other grievances when it came to using pauses and things like that, just as a general, and submitting tickets as well. They could have done that. And overall, it just kind of showed, obviously, I don't think that they're necessarily to blame. I believe one of their players at some point, like just offhandedly for a single round, experienced something weird.
Allegedly, of course.
Allegedly.
Yeah, we got DDoS too, guys. Like, we're all victims here.
Exactly. So like, I don't want to point any fingers, but it was definitely a little unfortunate that they just kind of took what was happening in stride and tried to use it to their advantage.
Which, that is a complete rat tactic move to say, well, we have the power to unpause the round. There's nothing in the rulebook that says we can't unpause when your tech time's out, so let's unpause. Where, like Koi said, it got to the point where every single player on UIU was disconnected, either in protest or because they were being DDoSed. And so for 9 rounds of max time, so we're talking about 20 minutes here, they just ran down the clock and farmed rounds, and they still lost. So, enjoy it another season of Advanced, but it's like unacceptable. There's no hello.
Definitely
my
full Roblox
camera's
mode.
upset. My camera's upset about it too. But there's no analog in traditional sports for where one team has like some unresolvable issue that makes them so they can't play the game correctly. Another team just says, "Well, fuck it, we're gonna get our W." Like, the only thing you could think about is horrific injuries maybe in soccer where
it's like when the field it's like when the field is too wet to play, or then like say like one team has like really good cleats and the other doesn't because for whatever reason. It's like if the playing field isn't level, why play? Exactly. It's so, as you put it, put it as what it's a microcosm of like the whole situation in an NA right now. Is like, it's just
is this how you want to get to Premier? Is this like what you're gonna put on your resume? Like, hey,
and they still lost to a team that was getting DDoS.
They lost a team that had to use 2 ringers, and then they lost a team that was getting DDoS. So justice ultimately prevails, but
it's
and then
ridiculous.
for them to go on the counteroffensive and be like, well, we didn't do anything wrong technically. It's like the rules don't matter. Like, it's the spirit of the game. Like, it seems like lots of players in Advanced and NA don't understand. Like, it's concept is simple.
Ethics.
Ethics in CSGO.
Ethics in life. Like,
we
it's
need
honestly
a CSGO
just like,
gate.
do you remember like the golden rule from preschool? It's like, treat others how you would want to be treated. Like, it's like everybody forgot how life works for a bit and is like, well, guess we'll just profit off of this. It's scummy to say the least.
Yeah, and I think that's like all. I mean, if anyone else has anything to say about it, but it's like, and in X13's credit, once they've been eliminated, we've still been seeing some DDoSing issues. So I think we can safely say like it wasn't targeted harassment in their favor. But it's like still you can't be a passive. You can't be a passive enjoyer. Like, you can't be be passively rewarded for when the other team is being DDoS. Like, right, it's not acceptable.
You're complicit in basically you're kind of empowering what's going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like if let's say like the DDoSers are trying to fuck UIU and they see that the other team's like running up rounds while they're all disconnected, they're gonna be like, yeah, great, like I'll just keep DDoSing UIU.
Yeah, and it's like the whole situation is just like a matter of like, can we just be good. And it's
Can we
like,
be adults? Can we be adults with like this little shred of ethics? Like,
and kind of speaking of ethics and maybe
the lack thereof,
we have,
this is an ethics free zone.
Yeah, so we had a interview with there was recently I believe it was earlier today, Ian Smith from the ESIC, also a famous lawyer and et cetera, et cetera. He did an interview kind of just talking about some of what's going on with the ESIC situation, and it was let loose that the FBI is officially involved in the North American match fixing situation. So we are all fresh off of watching Richard Lewis go on and talk about this for however long that was, but like it's, oh boy, like this is
federal
crimes.
I mean, it's always been federal crime, mind you. These players, just in their infinite hubris, thought that like the FBI would be too busy to notice NA Matchfixing, and good fucking luck. You may be smarter than ESEA, but you're not smarter than a bullet. Like, so enjoy prison basically. Like the FBI doesn't fuck around. Like the FBI will kick down your door and drag you out kicking and screaming, while ESEA might just ban you for match fixing. Like,
yeah, and like what Richard Lewis was like pointing out, like, okay, he was saying like what there was people who are like, I'm going to go to Canada. It's like, well, okay, well now you've just figured out how extradition treaties work. It's like, you're not going to, like, unless you're fleeing to a non-extradition country, you are screwed. You are absolutely railed.
I don't want to spoil what he said on his show, because he could definitely say it better than any of us can. Give it a watch. It's 4 hours, but honestly, every second of it is worth it. But some of the shit he's revealing, where these players are just idiots. Like they're talking in Snapchat groups, they're talking on Discord, they're using thinly veiled aliases where it's like Jay Halfman. They're like, no, that's too easy. Jacob H. Like, yeah, there we go. Like,
it's like nobody will figure out who you are from that, right?
Yeah,
like, surely your
do you just think, like, and I know from my own experience with investigating this, like these players aren't terribly smart, where they're just they're not terribly smart either, like where they'll talk about this stuff in video calls, they'll talk about it in team speaks, they'll talk about it in environments where like they don't have 100% control over who's listening. And the fact that none of them have been it's now public that lots of journalists have been sitting on things for a while, but like, come on, like,
hopefully that day of reckoning comes soon.
Yeah,
which 10 to 20 days being the given number. Now, okay, we could sit here and, of course, kind of regurgitate what we've seen in the RL report and everything like that. But the one thing I wanted to bring up, because I was talking to Koi before the show, and this is if you pardon me asking, here's the thing too, is like there's going to be a lot of teams and players who are going to be like, wait, I was maybe playing with like a player who could have been.
I don't think that's true.
Well, what I was going to ask was, when it comes to where the scene's going to go once once we're post report, we're going to have so many players going, holy crap, maybe this is why they knew everything. And I just wanted to hear from a player perspective, because like you were talking a lot before the show, like how this could be so destabilizing to even a lot of players.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
It's like it's just one big, I guess, like question mark. And until the names are out there and the scale of it is out there, like you're left, like maybe there is a particular teammate in your past that you didn't get like the right vibe from or something like that. And until there's actual light shed on the scene and the situation that's happened, like it's all a big guessing game. Like, I highly doubt that it's necessarily as good. I don't think it's going to be as big of a witch hunt as I'm sort of making it out to be, but it does bring into question certain things for sure.
It raises questions about seasons upon seasons upon seasons of MPL matches, and I think that's one thing where we act like players are going to be hugely surprised. Where it's like, whoa, I didn't know that guy was fixing matches. I don't necessarily think that's going to be true. because we all know from the chatter in the scene that there's certain names that come up time and time and time again, and people, we've even seen it recently where some of these players who have jumped to Valorant, like random people with like 5 followers will be like, "Oh, you got kicked from this team. Was it because you match fixed in Valorant?" And it's like, I don't think there's going to be a lot of like shocking revelationary surprises, but it's definitely going to affect the scene. Like people are going to be like, I think people will be like, yeah, that makes sense, but I think they'll still be shocked by the overall scale of it.
Yeah, the scale part is what's going to be insane, and that's why I'm thinking like, from a player perspective, like it's almost like, people are going to be like, it's just like it's a giant looming cloud, of course, of like what's going to happen. Maybe there are some people that people didn't know, but it's going to be big because like like we're going to have like Interpol involved for the people who have gone international, and then there's going to be like it's just a whole big yikes. And the NA scene is, of course, I'm not going to, drop everything out of what Richard Lewis was saying, but like, as he was saying like, ESEA League could struggle, like it's going to be tough moving forward. But on that note, we do have some relatively good news to talk about for these past week, maybe 2 weeks here that we had, where we did have, what was that? That was for
the Ven Invitational.
Yes.
The Ven Invitational. Mm-hmm. So we're going to talk about. So what we're going to do here is we're going to set up some good news, and then bam, we're going to hit you with some bad news. All right. So good news: Extrasol have continued to be one of NA's best teams, and they've qualified to the Blast Spring Showdown, making it that they're going to play They're going to be playing 4 European events, something that hasn't happened in a year now. So what do we think about this?
I am incredibly happy that they are able to go overseas and finally be able to, square up and measure up against the European competition, because this will be the first like true, you could argue maybe with Liquid and like coming back for events, that maybe there was some sort of international play there, but this will be the first time that we're actually transplanting a true North American only team into EU and seeing how they do. That's just going to benefit everyone, I think, in the long run.
Yeah, I think it's a continuation of history, because we, unfortunately, with the original Cloud9 roster that now forms the core of this roster, we kind of got, I guess, spoiled. We got spoiled from seeing their genesis and their evolution as a team because of COVID. They played a couple offline events in Europe, didn't do very good, and then we're stuck in NA. So I'm just excited to see them come back. But what do we think about their prospects to do damage in the European scene?
Well,
honest opinions.
I mean, OC's terrifying.
Yeah.
So, from my perspective, I don't know. You're going to get just the optimist, hopeful guy out of me. So I don't think the ESL rankings quite exactly line up with, where teams
reality
really are. Yeah. Like, it's like you see teams like Heroic below like Bad News Bears. It's like these teams have never faced together. And of course, no ranking system is going to be able to account for that. But I really want to see them do well. And I think that Marky brings an X factor, and Fang's been playing really well too. So like, I think that they've got enough of like that kind of, I don't think that they'd be as good as, okay, I don't know. This is tough. I think they might be kind of around that Chaos kind of level, but it's really tough to tell.
Yeah, that's fair.
And we never really got to see them get proven too. Rest in peace, FunSpark qualifiers. Seeing as they technically, that qualifier was forever ago and they technically qualified for FunSpark, but they're dead. So, but
my thing with Extrasol is that they have a lot of individual talent. We just recently saw Sonic, go absolutely bonkers against Pain. Marky is yet to be proven again in a long time overseas. OC is literal op legend right now in North America. Like, there's a lot of potential firepower here that has 100% the ability to upset some like of your middling European teams.
Yeah, definitely. Like we could see them getting some upsets definitely against teams like maybe Fnatic or Mouse Sports, or even like an FPX. Some of these now for the former two, I would say middling, down, dwindling stock. For FPX,
Down
I'd
bad.
say down bad. I think for me, my best expectation for them is to just get some top eight or equivalent result in Europe for one of the 4 events, and I'll be incredibly happy with that.
This is a thought off the top of my head. I think that they are they're like kind of how Endpoint was looking coming out of like the premiership, and that kind of stuff. I don't know if it's just like I'm getting this like Endpoint kind of vibe, where Endpoint, they 2-0'd EG. And I feel like that's something that we could see, it's almost like that chaos team, you look at like a March Madness bracket and you're going, who's the, what are the chaos teams? Who are the upset teams? And I think that Extra Salt is one of those teams. So they're yet to be proven. So they've got this potential. And I don't know, I'm just really excited to see it happen. They're in IEM Summer, they're in, they're here for Blast. It's like they're now, they have their opportunities now. So, it's just gonna be exciting to see how those play out.
Well, we do. So we've said the good news. We've had good times. We've been able to say how much we love Extra Salt. Now let's get to the crushing reality of being an NA team. I've heard rumblings around the scene, and it just you can kind of tell organically, because we have a team with 3 South Africans, an American, a Canadian, and a Mexican. The visa situation is going to be a fucking train wreck for these guys, if be diplomatic about it. So I'm legitimately worried that they're going to have to miss some of these events because they can't get visas with the COVID-19 situation, where it's like, for the South Africans, they go to Europe. Can they come back to America after that? Or for Marquis, will he be allowed back into Mexico if, Mexico or NA when he's done with Europe? So, I have fingers crossed that the situation continues to improve this month and that they will be able to go and they'll be able to come back. But I'm fearful. I'm basically praying for them every day.
Yeah, I mean, it's also going to come down to like vaccines and how, everybody's saying like, vaccine cards are going to be like, part of like a passport or whatever. It's like, are we going to see that come out? Like, that I think that would benefit them if that was like the case. It's just a matter of, are they going to get vaccinated in time for that kind of stuff? And these are all like unknowns. There's so many unknowns as far as like that visa situation. So yeah, I'll join you in that general concern.
I am very generally concerned.
Paperwork scares me. Yeah, I am scared for them.
And because we do have to say that this isn't Extra Salt. For as much as the team has impressed, the org isn't at a Cloud9 level by far, and I would argue to say it's not even at a chaos level, where we know that it's still a new org. They're still building their brand, they're still building their merch, they're still building their employees, and I am hoping and praying that their small team is able to work out the visa situation. But they definitely don't have as much weight to swing around as a Cloud9, where Cloud9 can, where Jack Etienne can call up his pal, who can call up his senator friend and get the visas. Be like, my team needs to get to Europe. And it's like, what can you do for me? Where the Extra Salt fellas, like, they don't have as much weight to throw around, and they might not even have the technical know-how to navigate the visas, the exciting world of international travel visas. So I hope I'm just gonna trust in the process, and I hope that they're just gonna pay smart people to figure it out for them and make sure that we get 6 out of 6 people to Europe. Or because another unfortunate reality I'm thinking of is Marquis always been the one who's had visa troubles, because unfortunately he's a Mexican player and they don't have the same sort of access that American players do. So in a worst case scenario, they might have to use someone like their coach TC, and then they're not going to do well, unfortunately. As much as I love TC, he hasn't been a pro in years at this point. So
exactly.
Now we do have one final thing in our final 50 seconds, and we were just going to say, hooray, High Coast won a cash cup. You know, that's good to see from
They
them.
did it. Hey,
Let's go.
But we'll also, in the meantime, give credit to our boy here, Coy from M2 Esports and his squad, which actually put up a pretty dang good fight against High Coast. What was it? You took it to OT
Like,
two, second OT.
OT2, yeah. They pushed these boys to the limit.
Now, you guys had, I believe, Clasia as a trial, correct?
Trial. He's on a trial period. Yes.
Exciting news.
Well, it's exciting things. You know,
We'll see how that goes.
We're definitely not ending this on an advertisement for MTU at all. But yeah, so here we are. 10 seconds left. Any thoughts before we wrap things up?
I would just say, match fixers, now is a really good time to admit your crimes to journalists, because as scary as someone like Richard Lewis is, he's probably less scary than your local FBI case agent. So,
Facts.
So with that, thanks for watching Max 30 once again, and we'll catch you guys next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.